Before we begin, make sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more powerful life stories that will move your heart. Miguel Santana was driving his sleek black BMW down the bustling avenue, late once again for a crucial business meeting. His phone buzzed constantly with impatient messages from his assistant, reminding him of the Japanese investors already waiting. Every second mattered. This deal could determine the future of his company. But fate had other plans. Out of nowhere, two little girls rushed into the street, waving their arms desperately. Miguel slammed the brakes, the tires screeching against the asphalt, his heart nearly leaping out of his chest. The car jerked to a stop, just inches away from them. For a brief moment, time seemed to freeze. The honking of cars behind him, the angry shouts of drivers, all of it faded into the background. What stood before him were not reckless children playing a dangerous game, but two terrified girls, no older than 10, their faces streaked with tears and dirt. One of them clutched the other's hand tightly, her eyes wide with fear, yet burning with determination. And then, with trembling voices, they screamed words that would shatter Miguel's world forever. "Please, sir, help our mother. She's going to die." Miguel rolled down the window, still shaken by the near accident. His voice came out harsh, almost defensive. "Are you out of your minds? Do you want to die?" The older girl stepped closer, her eyes swollen from crying, her hands pressed firmly against the glass. The younger one clung to her sister's arm, sobbing quietly, both of them wearing torn, dirt-stained clothes that told the story of poverty without a single word. "Please, sir," the older one pleaded, her voice trembling. "You must help us. Our mother is very sick. She might die if no one helps." Miguel glanced at his watch. 20 minutes late already. The deal with the investors was slipping away with every passing second. His instinct was to dismiss them, to send them towards some hospital or government program. But then the younger girl stepped forward. Her face was streaked with tears, her little hands trembling as she clutched a crumpled piece of paper. She said she was going to get better, but yesterday she fainted and didn't wake up. The doctor at the clinic wrote the name of the medicine. "It cost too much, we have nothing." Her words pierced through the noise of honking horns and impatient pedestrians. This wasn't a scam. This wasn't a game. These were children fighting for their mother's life. Miguel took the paper reluctantly, only wanting to end the uncomfortable scene. But when he read the name written on it, his expression froze, his pulse quickened. He knew this medicine. He had seen it before, during his own mother's painful battle with cancer. Miguel tightened his grip on the steering wheel, his mind torn in two directions. On one side, the voice of logic screamed at him, "You cannot miss this meeting. This contract is the lifeline of the company. Everything depends on it." On the other side, the sight of two fragile children begging for their mother's life echoed in his heart. The older girl's words replayed in his head. "We've been everywhere. No one will help us. They said only a private hospital can treat her, but it costs too much." The younger one's voice trembled as she added, "She's only 32, sir. We don't want her to die." 32? So young. Miguel's chest tightened. He thought of his own mother, how close he had come to losing her, how expensive treatments had kept her alive. He remembered the sleepless nights, the helplessness of watching someone you love slipping away. Cars honked louder, drivers shouting for him to move. Miguel could feel their eyes on him, impatient, judgmental. He knew every second he delayed was another step toward losing millions. Yet for the first time in years, the weight of money seemed almost meaningless compared to the desperate gaze of two little girls. Miguel sighed deeply. He realized he was standing at a crossroads, not of business, but of destiny. Miguel unfolded the crumpled slip of paper more carefully this time, the letters scribbled in hurried handwriting. His eyes scanned the name of the medication, and a wave of déjà vu struck him like lightning. It was the very same type of drug his own mother had depended on during her darkest days battling cancer. His irritation melted into unease. This wasn't coincidence. It was too precise, too familiar. He turned his gaze back to the girls, and for the first time he saw more than their ragged clothes and tear-stained faces. He saw truth. He saw desperation no child could ever fabricate. "What exactly is wrong with your mother?" Miguel asked, his voice softer now. The older girl wiped her tears with the back of her hand. We don't really know. She's so weak she can't eat. Sometimes she coughs up blood, and yesterday, she started saying strange things, like she didn't know where she was. Miguel felt a heavy knot in his chest. He didn't need a doctor to understand how serious those symptoms were. His instincts told him what his mind was still resisting. This woman was dying, and these girls were watching her fade away without a single lifeline. The younger one clutched her sister tighter and whispered through trembling lips, "She's all we have. Please, sir. She's a good mother. She doesn't deserve to die like this." Miguel closed his eyes briefly, his heartbeat pounding in his ears. He no longer saw them as an obstacle to his schedule, but as a mirror reflecting a choice far greater than any contract could offer. The older girl hesitated for a moment, then reached into her worn school backpack. From inside, she pulled out a faded, wrinkled photograph, edges torn, colors almost washed away. Her small hands trembled as she offered it to Miguel. "This is our mum, before she got sick." Miguel took the photo absent-mindedly, intending only to end the conversation quickly. But when his eyes fell on the image, the world around him collapsed into silence. The blaring horns, the shouting drivers, even the beating of his own heart seemed to vanish. He blinked once, twice, and then his stomach dropped. The face staring back at him from the photograph was one he had never forgotten, a face that had haunted his dreams for 15 years. Isadora. The girl he had loved with every part of his being, the one who vanished from his life without explanation, the one he had searched for until he had no strength left. Miguel's breath caught in his throat. His grip on the photo tightened as his pulse thundered. He looked again at the girls, suddenly noticing the familiar curve of their smiles, the shape of their eyes. Details he had ignored moments before now screamed the truth at him. He swallowed hard, his voice breaking as he asked, What is your mother's name?" The older girl answered softly, almost innocently, Isadora Carvalho." Miguel shut his eyes, the name striking him like a blade. His past had just come rushing back, along with a possibility that made his hands tremble and his knees weaken. Miguel's chest tightened as the name echoed inside him. Isadora. It was impossible, and yet the truth was staring him in the face. 15 years dissolved in an instant, and he was no longer the powerful businessman rushing to a meeting. He was the 21-year-old boy who had once been hopelessly in love. Memories came flooding back, their long walks under the fading sun, her laughter that could light up the darkest night, the promises they made before he left for the United States. He remembered her tears at the airport, how she had whispered a warning that she had a bad feeling about his departure. He had promised to return. He had promised they would marry. But 2 weeks later, her phone was disconnected. Letters returned unopened. She had vanished like a shadow, and despite all his desperate efforts, even hiring a private investigator, she was gone without a trace. Eventually, he gave in to heartbreak, accepted that she had chosen another path, and buried himself in work and a new life. And now, here she was, alive, sick, fragile, and the mother of these 2 girls. Miguel looked at them again, this time through the lens of a revelation too heavy to bear. The shape of their eyes, the determination in their voices, even the way the eldest tilted her head when worried. They all mirrored Isadora. But what if they mirrored him as well? A terrifying, wonderful thought sparked inside him. Could these children be mine? Miguel's breath grew unsteady as he studied the girls more closely. The eldest, her determined eyes, the same shade of brown as his own. The youngest, her smile curved just like Isadora's, but with something undeniably familiar in the jawline. His mind began to race. How old did they say they were? "I'm 14, the older girl answered when he asked, "and my sister Anna is 10. 14. Miguel felt the blood drain from his face. 14 years ago, he had been with Isadora. 14 years ago, just before he left for America, they had shared their last night together. The calculations lined up too perfectly. His hands began to tremble against the steering wheel. Was it possible that the daughter he never knew existed was sitting right in front of him, begging for her mother's life? The thought was both beautiful and devastating. A daughter he had never held, a childhood he had missed, moments stolen by time, by distance, by something, someone that had come between them. Miguel swallowed hard, forcing himself to breathe. He couldn't let the panic show. Not now. The girls were still staring at him with raw desperation, waiting for his answer, waiting for hope. And in that moment, one truth became clearer than any business deal, any contract, any empire he had ever built. Whether they were his children or not, these girls needed him. And Isadora, his Isadora, was dying. Miguel sat frozen, the weight of the revelation pressing against his chest. His phone buzzed again, another call from his assistant, another reminder that millions were on the line. But for the first time in his life, money felt insignificant. The older girl tugged at his sleeve. "Please, sir, if you just come see her, you'll understand. She's too good to die like this." Her voice cracked under the pressure of holding back more tears. The younger one whispered, "She's all we have." Miguel looked at the photograph again, his heart aching. He could see Isadora's smile, the same smile that had once given him strength to face the world. And now she was lying in some small dark room, fighting for her life, alone. This wasn't just about charity. This was about love, about the past, about destiny handing him one final chance to make things right. Miguel inhaled sharply, then made his choice. With trembling hands, he switched on the hazard lights, pulled the car fully to the curb, and unlocked the doors. "Get in," he said firmly. "We're going to see your mother, right now." The girls looked at each other in disbelief, their eyes wide. Then, clutching their worn school bags, they climbed into the back seat of the luxury car. For them, it felt like stepping into another world. Miguel knew the moment his foot pressed the accelerator, nothing would ever be the same again. The drive was short, but for Miguel it felt like a journey into another universe. The glossy high-rises and polished storefronts faded behind them, replaced by crumbling walls, narrow alleys, and tangled wires hanging overhead. He had passed this neighborhood countless times from the safety of his car, but he had never once stepped inside. Now, guided by two trembling voices from the back seat, he entered a place where wealth had no power, where survival was the only currency. Children ran barefoot through muddy streets, women scrubbed clothes in plastic buckets, and the smell of damp walls and smoke filled the air. "Here, sir," the older girl pointed, her voice small but certain. "Our house is at the end." Miguel slowed, his BMW looking grotesquely out of place among the patched-up shacks. For a moment, guilt gnawed at him. He had spent years living in comfort, blind to the suffering that existed just a few blocks away from his glass office towers. Finally, the car stopped in front of a tiny home built of exposed bricks, the doorway draped with a torn sheet instead of a door. The younger girl whispered, almost reverently, "Mama is inside." Miguel turned off the engine, his chest tight. This was it. Beyond that doorway lay the truth, the woman he had once loved and lost, and perhaps the family he never knew he had. With unsteady steps, he followed the girls toward the house, the photo of Isadora still burning in his pocket, like a flame he could no longer ignore. The moment Miguel stepped inside, the air grew heavy with the scent of dampness and old medicine. The tiny home had barely 3 rooms, one doubling as both kitchen and living space, furnished only with a cracked plastic table and a sagging sofa. The girls led him through a narrow hallway until they reached a darkened bedroom. There, on a simple bed covered by a thin sheet, lay Isadora. Miguel froze in the doorway, his breath catching in his throat. 15 years melted away in an instant. She was thinner, her skin pale, her body frail from sickness, but it was her. The same Isadora who had once held his heart so completely. Her chest rose and fell unevenly, every breath a battle. Beads of sweat clung to her forehead. She looked like a shadow of the vibrant young woman he remembered, yet the sight of her hit him with the force of a storm. The older girl whispered softly, "Mama, we brought someone to help." The younger one clutched her mother's hand, as if willing life back into her fragile body. Miguel stepped closer, his shoes echoing softly against the concrete floor. His eyes burned with tears he hadn't expected. This wasn't a stranger's tragedy anymore. This was his past, his love lying on the edge of death. Kneeling beside her bed, he felt his hands tremble as he dared to look closer at her face. Time had added lines, struggle had etched weariness, but beneath it all it was still Isadora, and the flood of emotion was too powerful to contain. In that fragile silence, Miguel realized one truth. He had found her again, but he might lose her forever if he didn't act now. As Miguel stood by the bedside, the past came crashing down on him like a wave he couldn't resist. Every detail of their story resurfaced, their teenage laughter echoing through quiet streets, the warmth of holding her hand under the stars, the promises whispered before his departure. He remembered the last night they had shared before he left for the United States, the way she cried at the airport, clutching him tightly, afraid of losing him. He had sworn to return quickly, to marry her, to build a future together. And yet 2 weeks later she was gone. Her number disconnected, her family silent, letters unanswered. For months he searched, desperate, refusing to believe she had simply vanished. But eventually, heartbreak and silence forced him to move on. Now as he looked at her fragile form, the reality of those lost years suffocated him. What happened to you, Isadora? Why did you disappear? Why didn't you call? Beside him, her daughters watched with wide eyes, unaware of the storm raging inside his heart. To them, this was just a wealthy stranger who had stopped to help. To Miguel, this was the woman who had carried half of his soul away all those years ago. His throat tightened and his hand hovered over hers, trembling, aching to touch her, yet afraid. Afraid of what the truth would demand. Afraid of the answers buried in 15 years of silence. Miguel knew then, his life was about to unravel, and nothing would ever be the same again. Miguel forced himself to act. He couldn't stand by and watch Isadora slip away. Pulling out his phone, he dialed his private driver, a man trained for emergencies. Within minutes, the family's exclusive ambulance, gleaming and fully equipped, rolled into the narrow, crowded street. The rumble of its engine and the flashing red lights drew curious stares from neighbors. Women carrying laundry buckets paused, children ran to the roadside, and men stopped mid-conversation. In a place where old vans doubled as transport and medical care was scarce, the sight of such a state-of-the-art vehicle felt unreal. The back doors swung open, and a team of paramedics in crisp uniforms stepped out, carrying advanced equipment. "Where's the patient?" one asked briskly. "In here," Miguel said, his voice steady but his heart racing. The girls clutched each other as the paramedics entered the dim room and moved quickly to Isadora's side. Oxygen tubes, monitors, IVs, all the tools of survival unfolded before their eyes. The younger girl whispered in awe, "It's like an angel came for Mama." The older one looked at Miguel, her eyes wide with a mixture of hope and disbelief. For the first time, she allowed herself to believe this stranger might truly save their mother. As the medical team carefully lifted Isadora onto the stretcher, Miguel followed close behind, his pulse pounding with each step. The line between his old life and this new reality blurred with every moment. For Miguel Santana, the man who had once believed money solved everything, this was the first time it was being used not for profit, but for love. The ambulance's sirens cut through the narrow streets, scattering curious onlookers as it sped away from the slum. Inside, the paramedics worked urgently, placing an oxygen mask over Isadora's face, checking her pulse, starting IV fluids. Miguel sat across from her, his hands clenched, his eyes fixed on every fragile breath she took. Each beep from the heart monitor echoed like thunder in his chest. "Her condition is critical," one medic warned. "Severe malnutrition, possible infection. If we don't stabilize her soon, it could be too late." Miguel nodded firmly. "Do whatever it takes. Money is not a problem." The girls huddled together beside him, their small hands trembling as they watched their mother's life hang by a thread. The older one whispered through tears, "Please, Mama, hold on, don't leave us." Miguel's throat tightened. He had closed billion-dollar deals with nerves of steel, but here, watching Isadora so fragile, he felt utterly powerless. The city skyline came into view, and with it the towering white walls of Santa Cecilia Hospital, the most advanced medical center in the region. Miguel had made sure of that. This was where lives were saved, no matter the cost. As the ambulance pulled into the private entrance, Miguel made a silent vow. "Isadora, I will not lose you again. Not this time, not ever." The doors of the ambulance burst open, and Isadora was rushed into the gleaming corridors of Santa Cecilia Hospital. Doctors and nurses, already alerted by Miguel's influence, lined up to take over. Machines beeped, orders were shouted, and white coats blurred past the terrified eyes of Laura and Anna. Miguel stayed close, never letting Isadora out of sight. His polished shoes echoed against the marble floor as he followed the stretcher, his heart pounding faster than it ever had in any boardroom. For once, no deal, no empire, no fortune mattered, only her survival. Within minutes, she was placed in an intensive care unit. Tubes, monitors, and IV drips surrounded her fragile body. A doctor approached Miguel with a grave expression. "She's suffering from severe malnutrition complicated by a systemic infection. It's treatable, but she'll need intensive care and constant monitoring. Recovery could take weeks, maybe longer." "How much time do we have?" Miguel asked, his voice raw. The doctor shook his head. "It's hard to say. She's weak, but the good news is she's responding to initial treatment." Miguel exhaled shakily, relief and fear mingling inside him. "Do whatever it takes. Spare no expense." Across the room, Laura and Anna clung to each other, wide-eyed and trembling. They weren't used to marble floors, polished walls, or doctors who rushed to save a life without demanding payment first. For the first time, hope flickered in their young hearts. Miguel knelt in front of them, forcing a gentle smile. "She's in the best hands now. Your mother is a fighter. Don't give up on her." But deep inside, Miguel wondered, was he reassuring them or himself? As the machines hummed steadily in the background, Miguel sat with Laura and Anna in the corner of the hospital room. The girls, still shaken, began to talk, words spilling out like water breaking through a dam. "Our mum works cleaning houses," Laura said softly, her voice steady despite the tears in her eyes. "She always comes home so tired she can barely stand, but she still cooks for us. She never complains." Anna clutched her sister's hand, adding, "Sometimes she didn't eat, just so we could have enough food. She told us she wasn't hungry, but we knew she was lying." Miguel's chest tightened, shame flooding through him. While he had spent years in luxury, traveling first class, dining at the finest restaurants, Isadora had been fighting to raise two daughters alone, sacrificing her own strength to keep them alive. "She's the bravest person we know," Laura whispered. "Even when we didn't have money for school supplies, she found a way. She said education was the only thing that could change our lives." The girls' voices trembled with pride and pain. Miguel struggled to hold back his tears. He could see Isadora's spirit alive in them. The same resilience, the same determination, the same fierce love. He turned his face away for a moment, wiping his eyes before they noticed. But it was too late. Laura's gaze caught his, and she asked quietly, "Sir, why are you helping us? You don't even know us." Miguel opened his mouth, then closed it again. The truth burned on his tongue, but he wasn't ready to reveal it. Not yet. Instead, he said softly, "Because sometimes life gives us a chance to do what we should have done long ago." Hours later, as the night deepened, a soft stir broke the stillness of the hospital room. Isadora's eyelids fluttered, her breathing uneven but stronger than before. The girls jumped from their chairs, rushing to her side. "Mama, you're awake!" Anna cried, gripping her hand. Isadora's gaze drifted slowly across the room, confusion clouding her tired eyes. She saw the machines, the tubes, the sterile white walls, and finally she saw Miguel, her brow furrowed. Where am I? And who are you?" Her voice was raspy, filled with suspicion. Laura leaned closer. "Mama, don't worry. This man helped us. He brought you here." Isadora turned her eyes back to Miguel, scanning him carefully. Even weakened, her look carried the sharp intelligence he remembered so well. "Why?" she asked bluntly. Why would a stranger spend so much money on someone like me? Miguel tried to steady his voice. Because your daughters moved me. Because no one should suffer like this without help. Isadora narrowed her eyes. No one helps without wanting something in return. What's your reason? Miguel hesitated. The truth pressed against his lips, but he knew it wasn't the right moment. She was too fragile, too weak to handle the storm that revelation would unleash. Sometimes people do help, he said softly. And for now, that's all you need to know. Isadora kept staring, as though trying to solve a puzzle buried beneath his features. She didn't recognize him, not yet. But something in her expression hinted that a memory long buried was trying to resurface. Finally, too exhausted to press further, she closed her eyes again. Nothing in this world is free, she whispered faintly. I'll find out why you're really here. Miguel's heart ached. She didn't see him as her savior, only as another mystery in a life already filled with pain. The following afternoon, Miguel returned to the hospital room. Isadora was sitting up this time, her strength slowly returning. Her eyes, however, were sharper, filled with suspicion and the fire of a woman who had fought too many battles alone. I need answers, she said firmly the moment he entered. Why are you here every day? Why are you paying for everything? Men like you don't appear in people's lives without a reason. Miguel's pulse quickened. He had rehearsed a dozen excuses, but none felt right. The truth weighed too heavily inside him. He could no longer keep it buried. He sat down in the chair beside her bed, lowering his voice. Isadora, do you remember me? She frowned, confused. Remember you? How could I when I've never met you before? Miguel exhaled slowly, then reached into his jacket. His trembling hands pulled out his wallet. From it, he slid his identification card across the table. She picked it up, reading aloud the name that shattered her composure. Miguel Santana. Her eyes lifted, locking onto his face. For a moment, silence choked the room. Her lips trembled, and color drained from her cheeks. No, she whispered, her voice breaking. So no, it can't be you. It's me, Miguel said, his own voice unsteady. After all these years, it's me. Isadora's hands shook so violently the ID slipped from her fingers and fell onto the blanket. Tears welled in her eyes, not of joy but of rage. You, her voice cracked, rising into a hoarse cry. You abandoned me. You left me alone when I needed you the most. Miguel's heart shattered at her words. This was the moment he had both longed for and feared. The truth could no longer remain hidden. Isadora's cries filled the room, raw and piercing, shaking Laura and Anna to their core. 15 years, Miguel. 15 years I waited, and you never came. Do you know what it's like to be abandoned, pregnant, and alone? Miguel staggered back, his chest heaving. Pregnant? The word crashed into him like a tidal wave. His mind spun. Memories of their last night together before he left. Her tears, her fears. Could it be? Yes, Isadora's voice broke. I carried your child while you were living a life of luxury overseas. And when I went to your house, do you know what your mother told me? That you wanted nothing to do with me, that you had moved on, that I was just a mistake you left behind. Miguel's face turned pale. His legs nearly gave way as the horrifying truth sank in. His own mother, the woman he trusted with everything, had severed the bond between him and Isadora. I swear to you, Miguel gasped, his voice trembling. I never knew. I searched for you. I wrote letters. I even hired someone to find you. I thought you had vanished without a word. Lies! Isadora's tears streamed down her cheeks, her fists clutching the blanket. Your mother looked me in the eye and told me you didn't want me. And I believed her. I was 4 months pregnant, Miguel. 4 months, and you never came. Miguel's throat closed. He looked at Laura, her eyes wide with confusion, hurt and fear, and at Anna, clinging to her sister. The timeline, the ages, the resemblance, everything lined up. His heart collapsed under the crushing truth. These were his daughters, and he had missed every moment of their lives because of a lie. Isadora's voice shook with fury and heartbreak as she continued, her tears soaking the pillow beneath her. I went to your house, Miguel. I was desperate, carrying your child, begging for you. But your mother slammed the door in my face. She told me you wanted nothing to do with me, that you had gone to America to build a better life, and that I was nothing more than a burden from your past. Her words cut into Miguel like blades. He felt his knees weaken, his entire world crashing down in front of him. Isadora, no, he whispered, choking on his breath. I never said that. I never knew. I swear to you, I thought you had disappeared without explanation. I never abandoned you. But Isadora shook her head violently. Don't lie to me. I was already 4 months pregnant when I begged for you. 4 months, Miguel. And your mother told me you wanted me gone, that you'd never look back. Miguel closed his eyes, grief and rage colliding inside him. He remembered how his mother had always spoken so vaguely about Isadora, dismissing her as a phase, warning him not to get distracted. He had never suspected the depth of her manipulation. Now the truth was unbearable. His own mother had stolen from him the chance to know his first child. He turned his eyes toward Laura, who stood frozen, her face pale with shock. 14 years old. The same number of years since he had last seen Isadora. The math was undeniable. Miguel's lips trembled as he asked the question that had been clawing at his heart since the moment he saw the photograph. Is Laura my daughter? Isadora's eyes blazed with pain and anger. Yours? Don't you dare ask me that. I raised her alone. I fed her when I was starving myself. I stayed awake through fevers with no one to help me. You weren't there, Miguel. You don't get to claim her now. Her words shattered him. The truth of Laura's existence was undeniable, but so was the reality of his absence. Miguel bowed his head, tears streaming freely. I should have been there. I should have known. I'm so sorry, Isadora. I can never give you back those years. But please, let me try to make things right now. Miguel stumbled into the hospital corridor, his chest burning with rage and grief. His hands shook as he pulled out his phone, dialing the number he had known since childhood. The line clicked, and his mother's familiar voice answered cheerfully, unaware of the storm waiting for her. Miguel, darling, how did the meeting with the Japanese investors go? His voice thundered down the line, louder than he intended. Mother, I need to know the truth. Did you know a woman named Isadora Carvalho? There was a pause, just long enough to confirm his worst fears. Miguel, where did you hear that name? Answer me, he roared, his voice echoing through the sterile corridor. Did you know her? Did you turn her away? On the other end, his mother sighed, her tone shifting from sweet to cold. That girl? Yes, she came once, crying, pregnant. I told her the truth. You had moved on. You had a future, Miguel. You were destined for greatness. Did you really think I would let some poor girl ruin everything we had worked for? Miguel felt his knees buckle. His mother's words confirmed everything. She was carrying my child, and you knew. His voice cracked with agony. You kept me from my daughter, from the woman I loved. Don't be so dramatic, his mother scoffed. You were barely a man, a child yourself. What future could you have had with her? Cleaning houses, raising children in poverty? No, Miguel, I saved you. I gave you the life you deserve. His vision blurred with tears, his fists clenching until his knuckles turned white. You didn't save me, he growled, his voice shaking with rage. You destroyed me. You destroyed us. You stole 15 years from me. 15 years from my daughters. For the first time, silence fell on the other end of the line. His mother's voice returned, trembling now. Miguel, everything I did for you. But Miguel no longer cared. His trust, his admiration, his love for her, shattered in a single moment. Back in the hospital room, Isadora's composure crumbled. The years of silence, the years of pain, poured out of her in uncontrollable sobs. Her shoulders shook as she clutched the thin blanket, her eyes burning with an anguish Miguel could hardly bear to witness. You don't understand, she whispered through her tears. Every night I lay awake, praying you'd come back. When Laura was born, I held her in my arms alone. No one to tell me everything would be okay. No one to share her first smile, her first steps. I looked at her and saw your face, Miguel, and it killed me. because you weren't there. Miguel's throat tightened, guilt searing his chest like fire. He stepped closer, his hands trembling, but she recoiled, shaking her head violently. "And then Anna," she continued, her voice breaking. "2 years later, I still believed you might return. But I was a fool. I raised both of them on my knees, scrubbing floors, washing dishes, collapsing at night, with nothing left in me but love for them. And every time I saw a rich man driving by, I thought of you. Living your life while I was drowning in mine." Laura and Anna clung to her, their young faces wet with tears. They had never seen their mother so broken, so vulnerable. Miguel bent down, his voice choked with remorse. "Isadora, I swear to you I never knew. I never abandoned you. My mother lied. She kept everything from me. If I had known, I would have been there. For you. For them." But Isadora shook her head again, her tears soaking the sheets. "Words don't erase the years, Miguel. They don't erase the hunger, the sickness, the loneliness. You can't undo what's been done." Her bitterness was a dagger, but Miguel accepted every cut, because she was right. He hadn't been there, and nothing, not even truth, could give her back the years she had lost. Laura and Anna looked from their mother's tear-stained face to Miguel's trembling hands. The storm of words had left them shaken, confused, but one truth stood out above the rest. Laura's voice was the first to break the silence, hesitant, fragile. "Mama, is this man our father?" The room fell still. Isadora's breath caught, her eyes filling again with tears. She turned away, unable to face them. Anna's small voice trembled as she whispered, "All this time we had a father." Miguel felt the air leave his lungs. His heart ached to answer, to claim them, but he hesitated, afraid of causing more pain. He looked at Isadora, silently begging for her to allow the truth to surface. Finally, through clenched teeth, she spoke. "Biologically, yes. But a father is someone who stays, someone who protects, someone who doesn't vanish for 15 years. The words sliced through Miguel, but he didn't flinch. Instead, he dropped to his knees in front of the girls, leveling his eyes with theirs. His voice shook, but every word carried the weight of his soul. "Laura, Anna, I didn't know, I swear I didn't. If I had known, I would have been there. I would have loved you, cared for you, watched you grow. Please believe me, I never abandoned you." The girls' eyes filled with tears. They wanted to believe, but doubt lingered. Laura's lips quivered as she asked, "Then why didn't you find us?" Miguel's throat tightened, his eyes burning. "Because the one person I trusted most, my own mother, kept you from me. But now that I know you exist, I will never let you go again." Anna leaned closer to Laura, whispering, "He looks like us, doesn't he?" Laura nodded slowly, her voice barely audible. "Yes, he does." Miguel remained on his knees, unable to stand beneath the crushing weight of guilt. His tears fell freely, not the controlled grief of a businessman, but the broken sobs of a man who had just discovered everything he had missed. "I should have been there," he whispered, his voice cracking. "For your first words, your first steps, your first day of school. I should have been holding your mother's hand when she was fighting to keep you safe. And instead, I was blind, living a life I thought was whole, when in truth, it was empty without you." Isadora turned her face away, her arms wrapped tightly around herself, as if protecting old wounds from reopening. She wanted to stay angry, to hold on to the years of resentment, but hearing his voice tremble, seeing the sincerity etched in his eyes, made her chest ache. Laura bit her lip, fighting back tears. "You can't just appear now and make it all better," she said softly. Miguel nodded slowly. "You're right. I can't erase the past. I can't give you back the years I lost. But I can promise you this. If you let me, I will spend the rest of my life making up for them. Every day, every hour, I will be here. I will fight for you, protect you, and never walk away again." Anna's small hand slipped into his, hesitant but searching for comfort. Miguel looked down at her, his heart breaking at how natural it felt. "I don't want to lose you again," he whispered, looking at both girls, then at Isadora. "Not when I've just found you." The room was heavy with silence, every soul inside wrestling with pain, longing, and the fragile hope that maybe, just maybe, redemption was still possible. Isadora sat in silence, her chest rising and falling with uneven breaths. Her body was still weak, but it was her heart that bore the heaviest weight. For years she had built walls around her pain, teaching herself to survive without Miguel, convincing herself she didn't need him. And now here he was, offering promises that reopened wounds she thought were buried forever. Her eyes filled with tears again, but this time they were not only of anger. They carried conflict, memories of a love she had once cherished deeply. She looked at him, really looked at him, and for the briefest moment she saw not the man who had abandoned her, but the boy she had loved, the one who had promised her forever. "I don't know if I can believe you," she said finally, her voice raw. "I carried the weight alone for so long. Every time I looked at Laura, I saw your eyes. Every time I held Anna, I remembered your smile. It was torture, Miguel, because even in your absence, you never left me." Miguel's throat tightened, his tears threatening to fall again. "Isadora, I never stopped loving you. Even when I thought you had disappeared willingly, you lived inside me. Every success, every moment of triumph felt hollow without you." She shook her head, clutching the blanket in her fists. "Words aren't enough. How do I know you won't vanish again? How do I know this isn't just guilt speaking?" He leaned closer, his voice trembling with conviction. "Because I've already lost you once. And losing you again would destroy me." The girls clung to her arms, their little voices breaking the silence. "Mama, maybe we should give him a chance," Anna whispered. "He saved you. Maybe he can save us too." Isadora closed her eyes, torn between bitterness and the fragile spark of hope. Her heart screamed in fear, but somewhere deep inside, the possibility of healing whispered softly, "What if?" Miguel stood at the foot of the hospital bed, his mind caught between two worlds. On one side was the life he had built, contracts, business empires, boardrooms filled with men who valued only profit. On the other was the life he had just discovered, two daughters who needed him, and a woman who still haunted his soul even after 15 years apart. For the first time in his life, the choice wasn't about numbers or power. It was about love, about family, about redemption. His phone buzzed again. Another reminder of the investors waiting impatiently, the deal hanging in the balance. Miguel stared at the screen, then turned it face down on the table, ignoring it completely. He looked at Laura and Anna, their young faces filled with both fear and fragile hope. He looked at Isadora, weary and broken, yet still possessing the quiet strength of the girl he once loved. In that moment, Miguel knew there was no choice at all. "I've spent my whole life chasing wealth, believing it would make me complete," he said softly. "But what good is it if I lose the only people who truly matter? If I lose you?" The room grew silent, his words settling like a vow. "I don't care about the contracts. I don't care about the fortune. If I have to choose between money and you, I choose you. Always." Tears welled in Isadora's eyes, though she tried to fight them. The girls exchanged a look, a spark of belief slowly flickering to life in their hearts. For Miguel Santana, the businessman who once measured his worth in millions, the greatest choice of his life had finally been made. The days that followed were filled with long hours at the hospital. Miguel stayed close, refusing to leave Isadora's side, no matter how many urgent calls came from his office. For the first time in years, he ignored the demands of his empire, pouring all his energy into the woman and the daughters he had just found. Isadora watched him with cautious eyes. Part of her wanted to believe, to lean on him after carrying the weight alone for so long. Yet another part of her whispered warnings, reminding her of the years of silence and betrayal. Trust, once broken, is not easily rebuilt. Laura and Anna, however, began to see him differently. They noticed the way he gently adjusted their mother's blanket, the way he spoke softly to the doctors, the way his eyes never strayed from her. To them, this man wasn't just a wealthy stranger anymore. He was Maybe, just maybe, the father they had longed for without ever knowing it. At night, Miguel sat by the window, staring at the city lights. The future was uncertain. He didn't know if Isadora would ever forgive him. He didn't know if his daughters would truly accept him. But for the first time, uncertainty didn't terrify him. It gave him hope. Because it meant there was still time. Time to fight, time to love, time to prove himself. And in his heart, he made a vow. Whatever storms awaited, he would never walk away again. Late one evening, while Isadora rested under the soft glow of the hospital monitors, Miguel sat in the corner, pretending to read through documents on his phone. Laura and Anna whispered to each other on the sofa nearby, their voices carrying just enough for him to hear. "Do you think Mama will let him stay?" Anna asked, her small hands clutching her sister's arm. Laura hesitated, her eyes thoughtful. "I don't know. Mama's been hurt too much, but don't you see how he looks at us? Like he's been missing us his whole life." Anna's eyes shone with a fragile spark of hope. "What if we could all live together? What if we had a real family?" The words pierced Miguel's heart. He lowered his phone, his chest tightening with a mixture of joy and sorrow. For years, he had believed his life was complete, filled with riches and success. But now, listening to the innocent dreams of his daughters, he realized what he had truly been missing. He walked over quietly and knelt in front of them. "I heard what you said," he admitted, his voice gentle. "And I promise you, if your mother allows it, if you let me, I will do everything I can to give you that family. A family that never breaks again." The girl's eyes filled with tears. Anna threw her arms around his neck, while Laura, though hesitant, allowed herself a small, cautious smile. For the first time, the dream of a complete family didn't feel impossible. It felt like a seed, tiny, fragile, but alive. Isadora awoke in the quiet of dawn, the steady hum of hospital machines filling the room. Her body was still weak, but her mind was sharper now, clearer. She turned her head and saw Miguel asleep in the chair beside her, his suit jacket draped over his shoulders, his hand still resting near hers as if he had fought sleep trying to guard her. For a moment her heart softened. Memories of the boy she once loved collided with the image of the man who had stayed by her side these past days. Could she really believe him? Could she trust that this time he wouldn't vanish? Her gaze drifted to Laura and Anna, curled up together on the sofa, finally resting peacefully after days of fear. They deserved more than survival. They deserved stability, a future filled with hope, not just hardship. Tears welled in her eyes as she whispered to herself, Maybe this is our chance to start again." But then the old wounds cut through. 15 years of loneliness, of hunger, of fighting battles without him. Her heart pulled in two directions, one toward forgiveness and healing, the other toward bitterness and distrust. When Miguel stirred awake and met her eyes, she quickly looked away, hiding the turmoil inside her. "Isadora," he said softly, his voice still hoarse from sleep, "I know I don't deserve it, but please let me stay. Let me fight for you, for them, for us." She didn't answer, not yet. But in her silence, in the way her tears didn't fall from anger but from something gentler, there was a glimmer of possibility. Isadora faced the hardest choice of her life, not whether she could survive, but whether she could open her heart again to the man who had once broken it. For most of his life, Miguel Santana had believed value was measured in numbers, contracts signed, profits earned, empires expanded. But sitting in that hospital room, watching the gentle rise and fall of Isadora's chest and the innocent dreams in his daughter's eyes, he realized how empty those victories had been. Wealth had bought him cars, mansions, respect in business circles, but it had never filled the silent spaces in his heart. Now in the fragile hands of two little girls and the weary smile of a woman he had once lost, he found something money could never buy: meaning. He understood now that true wealth wasn't measured in bank accounts. It was measured in love, in sacrifice, in second chances, and perhaps in forgiveness. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the skyline, Miguel whispered to himself, This is the fortune I was always searching for. Not power, not status, but them. His reflection in the window no longer showed the polished face of a businessman, but a man humbled, broken, and remade by love. He had discovered that life's true value wasn't what he could earn, but what he could give. And from that moment, Miguel knew he would never again measure his worth by wealth, but by the family sitting in that room with him. The weeks passed, and with every sunrise, Isadora grew stronger. The infection faded, her strength returned little by little, and the light in her eyes, though cautious, began to shine again. Miguel remained at her side, refusing to let business or fortune distract him from what truly mattered. Laura and Anna adjusted quickly to his presence, slowly allowing themselves to believe that the man who had once been only a stranger might now be the father they had longed for. Their laughter, once shadowed by fear, began to echo through the hospital halls. One evening, as the family sat together, Miguel reached for Isadora's hand. She hesitated, then allowed his fingers to intertwine with hers. Her voice was quiet but steady. "I don't know if I can forgive everything, Miguel, but maybe I can learn to try." His eyes filled with tears. "That's all I ask. A chance to prove that this time I won't fail you." The girls leaned against their mother, smiling timidly, hope glimmering in their young hearts. For the first time, they dared to dream of a future where their family was whole. Miguel looked at them, the daughters he had missed, the woman he had loved and lost, and realized he had been given a miracle. Not just a second chance at love, but at life itself. He had found redemption not in boardrooms or bank accounts, but in the fragile bonds of family, restored through sacrifice and truth. And as night fell over the city, Miguel whispered a silent vow. "Never again. From this moment forward, I will protect them, love them, and cherish them, for they are my true fortune."